Gil is currently the Senior Policy Advisor for the Assistant Secretary, Dave Danielson, at the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. He was previously Program Manager for the Office of Weatherization and Intergovernmental Policy Programs, where he oversaw a budget of about $12 billion. So he's had quite a bit of a fire hose in energy policy recently and has a long experience with a number of energy companies previously to joining DOE. He served as General Counsel for the Natural Gas Vehicle Coalition and Senior Energy Policy Advisor for Inform Incorporated. And he was also spent some time on the Hill as Senior Counsel to the House Subcommittee on Energy Conservation and Power, chaired by Ed Markey, who is still there and working very hard on these issues as well. So, and without further ado, thank you very much, Gil, for being here. We look forward to your presentation.
We'll figure it out. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the invitation back. It's a callback. Maybe next year I'll get the role. All right, let's get rid of that here. Are we ready for it? Well, first, you know, in Washington, I work with a lot of states, and I work directly with Assistant Secretary Danielson, who specifically asked me to say good morning to all of you. He wanted to be here this morning, but there was something else going on that keeps him from coming down. But he was very excited about this. We've talked about this presentation of what's going on in Florida 4 times now. I think this is about my 10th trip to Florida in the past few years alone. As we survey the landscape of America, you know, there's California and Massachusetts and New York, and they all have independently funded, very strong energy programs, and you know, most of the rest of the country doesn't want to hear about them. And I like how I've got good friends in all those states. I work with them closely, but I'm much more excited about that next tier of states, the states that are coming together and who are riding to the top, and that I think, because California, New York, Massachusetts have been doing it so long, it gets a little stale for them. And I see things going on in Florida that are more exciting than anything I see in any of those states. Every quarter of this state has people involved in clean energy, have people committed to the job creation, the economic development. And it's, you know, as Representative Chris Foley said, it is all the above. There are so many different opportunities here. So what I want to do is give you sort of a lay of the land, hopefully try to excite you a little bit about where we're going, what we're accomplishing, and then unfortunately I do have to leave, catch a flight back. I've got a meeting in Washington this afternoon. So let's start with where we stand today. This is the energy mix as it exists today. As you can see, you know, it's nuclear, it's coal, it's natural gas, and a tiny part of it is renewable generation. When you take the non-hydropower, and most of the hydropower is at dams that have been around for 80 years, take the hydropower portion out, renewable energy is still a small component. And so everybody looks at this and says, well, you know, why are we spending $2 billion in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy? Well, the reason is, look at the resources, look at the potential. We completed a recent study where we looked at, you know, could we power 80% of America's electrical needs with renewable energy with the existing infrastructure we have? And the answer is we could, and we could do it cost effectively. 80%. Almost all of the power that we would consume in the country, and again, 72% of all electricity is used in buildings. So our lights, what we do day to day, we couldn't live without this. We could do this with homegrown energy, completely homegrown energy. You add the reserves of oil and natural gas that have been discovered, the new drilling technologies, and America is now on the cusp of becoming the world's leading energy exporter. This is a far cry from when I was in high school, supplementing my meager after-school income cutting lawns by sitting in gasoline lines during the first energy crisis. And some of you are as old as me, and you remember all of that. Well, we've gone from, you know, the world's largest importer to becoming nearly the world's largest exporter, and it's a threshold we're going to cross in the next couple of years. Details of this are hard to see, but this is what's exciting. When you look at the cost competitiveness of what we consider to be the renewable technologies, whether it's wind or solar, central station solar, solar PV, bio, et cetera, Many of these technologies are now either at or very close to cost parity, even with the low costs of natural gas, which is increasing in use for generation of electricity. So we are close to cost parity. It means you can generate electricity as cheaply from a photovoltaic on your roof, if not more cheaply, less expensively, I should say, than you can from buying it from a utility. This is a sea change that's about to unfold. The President has challenged us, of course, to double renewable energy production. He's challenged us to cut in half the amount of energy that we waste in this country. And all of it is without incremental cost, in essence, because of cost competitiveness. So the movement of my office from being one of the largest science research organizations where we do science fiction things with algae and all kinds of advanced energy materials and energy production, we're now moving more toward market transformation. You know, think about this. What does it mean for a utility when 60 or 70% of your retail customers, whether they're homeowners or businesses, have photovoltaics installed on their roof, and they're not buying from the utility, actually they're putting power back in the grid? What happens when after almost 100 years of a regulatory system in which you get paid for selling electricity, and the more electricity you sell, the more money you make, all of a sudden people aren't buying electricity from you, either because they generate their own, whether it's geothermal or solar voltaic or small community wind, or through advanced energy efficiency technologies, which can reduce that wasted energy that we have. 50 cents out of every dollar most Americans spend don't do a thing for them on energy. It's just wasted. It goes out windows. It goes through uninsulated, poorly sealed buildings, inefficient appliance, inefficient vehicles, et cetera. So what happens when you're a utility and your mandate, this monopoly service territory you've been given, and in exchange for that you guarantee reliable service, well, all of a sudden you're not in control of reliable service anymore. You're not fixing that PV panel up on the roof all the time. So what does that mean? What does that landscape mean? Those are issues that are today issues. When I started the Department of Energy 5 years ago and started talking about these things, people kept thinking we're 10 or 15 years out. We're a lot closer than 10 or 15 years out. The changes in the world energy market have driven enormous amounts of investment, and it's not just in the United States. This is now an international competition. As you know, China, Germany, Israel, other countries around the globe actually are doing more. They use more renewable energy. They're producing more. They have more people employed. The President has basically said this is a race, and the winner of the clean energy race is going to be the leading economy in the world. We want to be the leading economy in the world. We have to win this race. So our commitment to you is we're going to do everything we can. But when we get to this issue of we're right there at cost competitiveness on a lot of technologies, we're ready to substantially increase the amount of both energy efficiency technologies and renewable energy technologies that are deployed, we know we can't do that from Washington. That's why I spend my time out in the States. It's why I've been to Florida 10 times. It's why I've been to virtually every state in the United States in the last 4 years. Because so much of the energy infrastructure is controlled at the state level. It's regulated at the state level. That's where the bargains are created. That's where you are. So we have to use what we can best do in the federal government, which is exchanging information. We can provide some grant money. We have a new competitive grant coming out. I know you've got Patrick Cumming, who runs the Florida Energy Office, which conveniently is located within the Department of Agriculture, which I think makes a lot of sense in this state. We have a new competitive solicitation to the state on new innovative policies, on how to pull the Space Coast Energy Consortium together with what's happening in Pensacola, what's happening down in Charlotte County, what's happening down in South Florida, how you can pull it all together into an effective statewide policy and program mechanism that will begin to incorporate some of these changes and unleash the job creation opportunities. Let me give you a quick survey of where we are. We have a commitment that by 2030, 20% of the energy generation in America will come from wind power. Wind power is at price parity right now. It is the most cost competitive along with solar PV of all the renewable energy technologies. The issues we still have on wind power do relate somewhat to an antiquated transmission, high voltage transmission system, namely Where the wind is not where the people are located. That's why we're looking at offshore wind. We're looking at wind power that we can bring in from the coast to where the populations are. And we've had the first deployment of major offshore wind power. Now, this is nothing new. They've been doing this in Europe and other places for years. But for the United States, the potential of offshore wind is enormous. There are huge issues. You have powerful, powerful forces in the ocean and in the currents and in hurricanes and in the winds. And how do you deploy safely and effectively? Those are some of the challenges we're spending money on. This is the scenario for wind power. And we're getting close. Solar voltaics, we have a program called Sunshot. I think I have a slide on it, in which our goal is to bring the installed cost of solar down to $1 a watt. Absolutely price competitive with all conventional sources of power. When you look at some of the new financing mechanisms of solar leasing, where a third-party company continues to own and maintain the solar voltaic equipment on your roof, and you simply start buying the power from your own generator on your roof, and you're buying the power at less than half the cost of what you're paying for the utility power, you can understand why there's been such an explosion, literally, in installations. We've had companies go from installing 20 or 30 a month to doing 4,000 and 5,000 a month in places like California, Colorado, and Arizona, where public policy has shaped that. Renewable energy credits, trading systems, mechanisms that help monetize some of those external costs that are now not reflected in the marketplace. And where we have those state policies, we've seen enormous growth in job creation. Oh, this is kind of our record. I'm going to look back in terms of what we've done. 3 times cost drop over 12 years, 30% of the world's patents. These are all from EERE grants and things that we've worked on with our partners. One point, what this means is an opportunity in manufacturing. There's so much of this equipment, and there's so many businesses in Florida that because of offshore drilling in the coast, in the Mexican Gulf, are already established in doing this type of drilling and other technology. And the ability to convert and to become a participant in this market in Florida is absolutely huge. As a matter of fact, Florida is one of the 3 top states in terms of the production of materials and equipment that are going to service this emerging industry. Hydrokinetics, I was with a hydrokinetic company before I came to the Department of Energy 5 years ago. We deployed the first set of turbines in the East River of New York. And the reason we did so was fairly simple. We were originally looking up in Buffalo and the St. Lawrence Seaway with this constantly flowing water. And we worked with the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, and they said, we don't need any more renewable power upstate New York. We got tons of wind. We can generate everything we need. We have a small population. Where we need power is in New York. New York relies on 4 huge, they were historically coal-fired power plants. They have been converted to natural gas and oil. And those plants are aging. There is an absolute barrier in terms of bringing renewable power from upstate into New York. There's no transmission capacity. So New York City and Long Island, a population of some, 15, 16 million people, are utterly dependent on the power plants that they have available on Long Island and New York, and those power plants are old. They rely on fuels that are not as clean as is required under air quality and other restrictions in the area. So New York is looking at how do we self-generate with renewable power? How do we use photovoltaics? How do we use wind? So we deployed in the East River of New York, and we provided our power to power a local supermarket. It was a small field of turbines and an electric hybrid bus recharging facility. And the idea of rivers flowing through every major city in America becoming a power plant to generate power is absolutely huge. Biofuels. I don't need to tell you a lot about biofuels. Florida is one of the leaders in the country in terms of investment and research. You are an agricultural state. The potential, this is not ethanol anymore. Ethanol, no one talks about ethanol anymore. We're talking about advanced biofuels, advanced materials, and guess who has the biggest interest in biofuels? It's the U.S. military. Our biggest partner in our biofuel development program is the Defense Department. And the simple reason is when you're fighting a war and you're flying your fuel from bases in North Carolina and Florida to Iraq and Afghanistan in order to refuel the equipment you have, because you can't have indigenous fueling facilities because they get blown up. They cost too much. It's too expensive. Well, it doesn't make sense. So what the Department of Defense wants to do is it wants to become independent, doesn't want to depend on buying fuel from places where we might be fighting, as we did in Iraq. They want to be independent. And so the Department of Defense is our major partner here. What does all this mean in terms of well, we're going to have solar from everybody's roof, we're going to have small scale wind, we're going to have large scale wind, we're going to have geothermal, we're going to have concentrated solar, we have enormous potential in terms of biofuels. Well, this isn't your mama's electricity grid. You know, on the left side, here's what we created 100 years ago. We decided that we were going to locate massive power plants, 1,000, 2,000 or more megawatts, and we'd put a few of them around, and we would locate them in isolated areas away from population centers. We would then bring the power through high-speed, high-voltage transmission, step it down, convert it, deliver it through a local distribution system. Fairly simple. Power plant goes on a wire, gets stepped down, goes on another wire, it's used, there's some control mechanisms, utility does it. Over on my left, that's what the world is going to look like, completely different. We're going to have, and we are moving aggressively on smart grid. I've got a slide just about how much we've spent in Florida on smart grid alone. But we're going to have the capability of doing instant analysis, computer-driven, of where the demand is and how to deliver the power and what power and where the power is coming in and how to balance the system with power going out and power coming in from thousands of small sources, not large sources. A lot of this power will be variable generation. You get less solar power when it's cloudy than you do when it's sunny. That's an evident fact. This sophistication of the system and making sure that at the bottom line, when we hit the light switch, the lights always go on, because that's the bottom line. And believe me, I've been in places around this world doing power projects where you hit the light switch and you didn't know if you were going to get a taser shock, or the lights were going to go on, or nothing was going to happen. And believe me, that was standard operation. That was absolutely insane. So that reliability in building this system is an enormous undertaking that we're doing in a public-private partnership. I love this because the busier it is, the more it'll give you the sense of how much we have going on and how much the changes are that need to be developed and how we need to work together. And this isn't happening in Washington. This is happening right here. This is happening in every control center around the utility, absorbing new and varied sources of power. One of the fun things that we've done is we've tried to really forecast. We've become weathermen. And the solar forecasting model that we've developed to predict how much power is going to generate based upon determining weather and cloud cover actually has proven to be more reliable than the weather forecasting system in the United States. We have more accurately predicted cloud cover and bad weather than they have. So they're now asking us for our system. It's a lot of fun. Vision we have, and we deliberately do this for a home. Right now, our system is overcapacitized. In part, there's a huge cost that we pay. Utilities build redundant capacity. They're not sure at any given moment exactly what the load's going to be, and if a plant goes out, they need to have backup generation. So we have, depending on the region of the country, 1.5 to 2 times the amount of generation we actually need to serve the load. That's going to change as time goes on as we have more sophisticated control systems. And we're going to have the ability to pull excess solar power coming off of people's roofs, instantaneously respond. When you put in a new plug load, we're going to have a sensor that you will have in your home that will calculate exactly how much energy is going to be needed, will track your patterns of usage and understand it, and will locate instantaneous generation to be available at the time you need it in the most efficient way. We can optimize the efficiency of the system. We could save hundreds of billions of dollars a year. To do this, we've developed a new integration facility. If you happen for some reason to be going out to Golden, Colorado, this is a phenomenal it is like science fiction walking in there in terms of seeing how this all operates together, with the end product being that the lights are on, the building is cool, and everything looks the way it's supposed to look, but this fascinating whirlwind of stuff that's going on. This is a public-private. We've got a relationship with almost every GE and Siemens and Westinghouse and General Dynamics, and almost every major company in America is now using this facility to design new equipment that will deal with this world of variable generation. Let me talk a little bit about energy efficiency, which is where I focus a lot of my time. It is a top priority. The President in the State of the Union said he wanted to reduce energy waste in this country by 50%. For us, we also want to double our energy productivity. And energy productivity is simple. How much useful energy do you get for what you pay for? Right now, you pay $1, you're getting about 50 cents worth of energy. If you're in a really energy efficient building, maybe it's 70 cents of value. But we want to double that energy productivity. We would like to get up to the 90 to 95 cent worth of value for every dollar you spend. So our basic approach is to accelerate progress across the technology pipeline. Almost all energy efficiency technologies in the market today pay for themselves. Almost every energy efficiency technology you deploy will over time pay for itself. Some sooner, some later, but they all pay for themselves. And where they pay for themselves creates opportunities to finance. What we need now to do is to figure out the mechanisms to make this into a robust market. We have started a finance office in the Department of Energy, which I'm pleased to work with. One of our projects that we're working on now is to work with institutional investors. It's to work with the capital markets. Right now, capital markets do not play a role in energy efficiency. They do in mortgages, they do in credit cards and auto loans, they do in major oil and gas type of projects where the laws are created to allow that. Well, that doesn't work for energy efficiency. So now we're going to talk to institutional investors. We're going to look at the right policies to bring in liquidity into the marketplace. A lot of energy efficiency in this country has been paid for by taxpayers and ratepayers. Mike mentioned I ran the Office of Weatherization for a year before moving to the front office at DOE. Well, we have had a low-income weatherization program for the past 35 years. That low-income weatherization program has weatherized, improved the energy efficiency of more homes than any other program in the United States. And yet for the $6 billion we've spent over those 36 years, we're not even close to a third of the way through just dealing with low-income homes. So the federal government paying, using some ratepayer assistance in some states, not in all, isn't going to get the job done. You know, Fond is saying, not enough ratepayer dollars, not enough taxpayer dollars. This is all about the private sector. And so we need to, through this Office of Finance, working with the states, working with the right policies, bring in that enormous amount of capital that's looking for a home in this industry. Here's some of the tools we have. All of this is on our website in terms of our Better Buildings program, the 179D, the Qualified Energy Conservation Bonds. There's a long list. Pleased that our partners in USDA are here with their rural lending and their energy efficiency programs and renewable programs. They're becoming a leading source. What we want to try to do as much as possible is use those limited taxpayer, ratepayer dollars to leverage private sector money. So we have talked with states with that $12 billion. We have over close to $1 billion still sitting in revolving loan funds and sitting in loan loss reserves, serving as credit enhancement, trying to leverage private capital. Those are the kinds of things that we need to do. We have to get away from this idea that government's going to do it all, government's going to pay for it all. Well, we have policy things we're responsible for. We create the utility code. We create the way power is bought and sold in this country. Government has to address those things, federal government working with states and localities. But when it comes to paying for things, when it comes to making choices of what technology to deploy, how to deploy it, what the structures are, private sector is much better than us. And that's what we need to do. And I will say that Dave Danielson, who was a former venture capital partner, and now with Secretary Muniz, who comes out of a great program at MIT, we've got leadership at the top that understands this thoroughly, absolutely understands it, is completely committed to it. Better Buildings Challenge. The President has challenged commercial building owners in this country to reduce energy consumption 20% by 2020. It's a voluntary program. It's a recognition program. We will recognize you, the President will recognize you for your endeavors, but what we want you to do is submit to us a clear plan. What technology, how you're going to finance it, how you're going to deploy it, how you're going to measure and verify it, and we want you to commit to putting it all up on the web, entirely transparent. I am happy to say that hundreds of companies have signed up, more than 100 communities have signed up. We've got mayors all across the country who have committed to reduce energy consumption in every commercial building by 20% in their city. And I've done a lot of the dedications with mayors, and every mayor asks me the same question as soon as we get away from the microphone. How are we going to do this? It's about pulling together all the people. You pull together the banks, you pull together all of the folks, the local utility representatives, the folks who do equipment, plumbers, and the heating and the cooling. You pull together an entire network and you put together a plan that can be done. We have not forgotten at all the importance of manufacturing. Matter of fact, clean energy manufacturing is Dave Danielson's signature initiative. We have a major program underway. We have made great strides in the industrial sector. A little over 10 years ago, we were 15th in the world in terms of energy productivity in the industrial sector. We are now #1 in the world. We have the most efficient manufacturing center industry in the entire world, and that's through a great commitment of efficiency upgrades, of new equipment, control systems. But having said that, we've only tapped 20% of the market. 80% of US manufacturing facilities are still manufacturing the way they did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Inefficient, poorly sealed and controlled buildings, outdated lighting equipment. So we have an enormous amount of potential, and therefore we're working very closely. Combined heat and power, of course, for those that have a thermal load as well as the need for electricity. Why have two sources? Why do you have a steam plant and you're buying electricity from the utility when your steam plant is properly configured to generate your electricity? And you can supplement that with solar panels up on your roof. So let's look at the economics. So we spend a lot of time talking with CFOs. I mean, I'm not a technology guy. I love the science, I'm around, I don't get it at all. I'm not a technology guy. I'm a lawyer, and I'm a lawyer who has worked in transactional and financing. So I can sit and talk with CFOs and just talk numbers about, I don't understand why you're not doing this. And they sort of look at it and say, I don't understand why we're not doing it either. Well, it's hard. You know, energy isn't your first business in most of these manufacturing plants. So we have an aggressive program, and we have great partners in the States. 40 gigawatts, that's the President's goal. We're going to hit it. All right, there we go. Residential buildings, we have 41 city program around the country. Over $500 million that we put out has been leveraged close to $1.5 billion. That's doing energy efficiency upgrades in the residential sector. Clearly the hardest nut to crack. You know, you and I are alike. We got kids, we're working full-time jobs, our spouses are working. We got a lot of things going on. Worrying about how I can maximize energy efficiency in my home is just not at the top of my list. Knowing who to turn to, there isn't a lot of information. Who do you trust? You know, is it going to be a fly-by-night? Is it really realistic? Is there somebody who can do it? These are all things that these programs are addressing and addressing successfully. I'm going to move through home performance. Energy Star is, everybody understands the Energy Star label. We've been breaking out. It's a combination of financing and certified Energy Star providers. Our demonstration programs were so successful that we've now more than tripled the number of programs that are moving around the country. State and local policies, better codes, utility policies. These are all things that you need to work with your legislature, with your public utility commission, with the governor, with your mayors, with your county commissions. These are all things that you can do that not only will help save money, whether it's in the retail sector, the residential sector, the manufacturing sector, but it's going to create jobs. As you improve the efficiency of buildings, as I said, 72% of all electricity is used in buildings, and roughly half of that is wasted across the country. The only way to improve that efficiency is to put people into those buildings to upgrade the efficiency of those buildings. Those people aren't going to come from California if the buildings are in Florida. They're going to be local. It's all in your economy. It's all in your community. It's a tremendous opportunity to put people to work. Here's just on smart grid alone in terms of upgrading meters and having homes be able to communicate with the electric power system, having the transmission and distribution system better synced. Just an idea of some of the grants that we're providing, and all these grants leverage additional money. So as you can see, Florida, which on a per capita basis has as much of this as anybody in the country, if not more, is really growing. Utilities are very progressive in terms of adopting the technology changes. If we can catch policy up to that, I think you've got something that's really going to take off. So, goal here, working together, strengthen partnerships, communication, partnership between the federal government, state government, local government, working with the private sector. Share what's working, speeches like this, presentations on the web, webinars. You know, the one thing the federal government can do and we do well is collect information. Not just about what's good in the United States, but worldwide. What are the technologies, what are the programs, what are the policy approaches that work, and how do we share them and disseminate them? We're very good at that. We're much better at that than we are at a lot of other things, to be honest with you. So, I'm going to conclude with that. I don't know if there's time for just a couple questions. Mike will do that, and then I'm going to run to the airport. So thank you, everybody. Sure.
Can you handicap a rec market and what's happening nationwide?
The markets are adjusting to the enormous quantities of natural gas and the bubble that we have right now. And so energy prices actually are lower now than they have been at any time. We've seen some spike in gasoline prices due to refinery issues, particularly in the Midwest. But with that sort of pressure, downward pressure on prices, has brought downward pressure on renewable energy credits. We've seen the carbon market collapse in Europe. We've seen the carbon market in the RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative in the Northeast states, drop because of declining energy prices. So right now I would say that there isn't the same move that led 17 states to put renewable portfolio standards and to put credit systems into place very, very quickly 5 or 6 years ago. We've seen momentum slow. Do I believe it'll come back? Absolutely. And the reason is simple. Look in this room today. Every meeting I go in every place around the country, I've got business people, I've got investors, I've got people who are sensing that this is a market job creation. That driver will move to the set of policies which include renewable energy credits. It's simply, there are too many externalities in the energy marketplace that aren't reflected in the cost of energy, and RECs are the way to capture that. So I'm thinking that the odds are good. It's going to take us longer than any of us want. Sure.
What monetary benefit do the utility companies have to make everybody go to these different devices that are going to lower their sales?
Well, that's clearly a huge negative motivation. If they do nothing, they're going to be out of business. If they do nothing, they're going to be facing bankruptcy. This is happening. This is inevitable. We've seen even utilities that we thought would never move in this direction now are developing new programs in places in the country where you didn't think. The southeastern United States is one of the hottest markets in the country for energy efficiency and renewable energy technology now, and it's being led by utilities who are feeling that pressure of declining sales and growing opportunities. The upside is the ability to do what they've always done, which is to be a blue chip stock and to provide a steady source of dividends and income to their shareholders, most of whom are many institutional investors, many pension funds and retirees. This is what drives utility executives and CFOs, is they have to be profitable. So this is their opportunity to shape a system. They own the equipment that's there. The transformation of utilities from being the primary provider of reliable power to being the primary backup power supplier is going to happen. It's going to happen over a number of decades, but it is going to happen. And the challenge for utilities and the regulators and for the policymakers is how to make sure that utilities remain profitable, because we need that system to be operational. We need that reliability. So It's either get on board or the train's going to pass you by.
Do you see the role of energy savings performance contracting to be a significant factor in the future to finance these projects?
No, my favorite question. Energy performance contracting has grown from about $1 billion a year to roughly about $6 billion a year. It is a system in which the contractor guarantees savings and then gets paid out of the savings. And if the savings aren't there, the contractor doesn't get paid. And so performance contracting. The source of most funding to finance the companies that sign performance contracts, 70% of it comes from insurance trusts. Insurance trusts are the most conservative investors in the United States. So what they've told the contractors is, you can guarantee performance, you can do all of that, but we only want you to do the work in places that we have 100% assurance are going to actually pay you the cost. So they do it in government buildings. They do it in federal government buildings, state and local government buildings. They do it in the municipal, university, school, hospital, quasi-governmental market. Moving beyond that market into retail, commercial, industrial, even residential has been the challenge, and there hasn't been the source of financing. The Internal Revenue Service earlier this year gave a private letter ruling to a company in Annapolis, Maryland called Hannon Armstrong. And it was a letter ruling that allowed them to do an IPO, initial public offering, for a real estate investment trust that's going to do nothing but energy efficiency. Hannon Armstrong is the leading financer. They arrange the money for most performance contracting in this company. Now all of a sudden they have a pool of capital that doesn't come from insurance trusts, comes from you and me. You can go into the securities market, you can go and buy this through your stockbroker, you can do it online. So this opens up a pool of capital that's going to allow performance contracting to grow. And who doesn't like the idea if you don't perform, I don't have to pay you. So I see performance contracting, and I can't begin to tell you the number of legal groups that are working, because these contracts have become proprietary, they become very confusing, they need to be standardized and they need to grow. And as the secondary market emerges, that's what every mortgage that people sign in this country is largely the same document. California, New York, there's some addendum and write-up, but the largest, same with auto loans, same with credit card agreements. And that's because the people who buy these loans in the secondary market demand the standardization. As we grow with these institutional investors, the secondary market and energy efficiency, we'll begin to standardize performance contracting. As we expand the pool of capital, we'll see performance contracting move. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're forecasting such literally an explosion in the energy efficiency market over the next 10 years.